So if you've ever desired to put on muscle and you want to remain natural, then this is going to be the blueprint, the definitive video for how you get it done. Jeff Cavaliere, ATHLEAN-X.com.
Jesse Laico, ATHLEAN-X.com.
Guys, I want to do something slightly different here. Okay, this is going to be a little bit of a longer video, but chock full of information. You might want to even break out your notepad for this, because I want to lay out step by step how someone who wants to remain natural can build as much muscle as possible, having actually done this over the course of years here with Jesse. And yes, it's going to take years. Whoever tells you it's going to take 2 months or makes you feel bad about the fact that in 2 months you haven't become Arnold Schwarzenegger, they're lying to you. I'm going to give you the truth here, no BS, the smartest way for you to do this, okay? And as a natural lifter for my entire life, I know how to maximize the amount of muscle that I can put on my body. I'm not the biggest guy on YouTube, but I certainly am the most natural amongst a lot of them. I'm not saying everybody, but a lot of the people who you try to get your information from who are maybe steering you down the wrong path because they have a bias having used steroids. We're not doing that. How would you do it? The first question people want to know is, what's the workout look like?
What's the split?
What's the split? And I will start by answering that question, and that is, there is no magic split.
No.
There really is no magic split, and I'm going to ruin a little bit of like Christmas for people right here, right? I'll tell you that there's no Santa Claus. They all work depending upon especially which ones you've already done and which ones you're moving from one to the other, because the novelty of the stimulus of one might be really effective for somebody who was just doing another type of split that wouldn't have the same effect if the person was doing a different type of split. It's like how you move through the splits does help you a bit.
Yeah.
But the question of the magic split first starts with one question I ask everybody, and that is, what is your availability to train? Meaning, how many days a week are you willing to train?
Right.
And I say willing because that's important. Like, if you're not really willing to train or invest that much time in training, I have to respect that and realize that maybe you're just not that enthused yet because you haven't seen a whole ton of results. But when you start to get going and you see the results, you become more enthused. You offer me up more time to start doing this, where 2 days becomes 3 days, becomes 5 days a week. And that's okay, because if I don't get you to become enthused at all about training, then you don't see any results and you never desire to do any more than you're already doing right now. So how can I work with you? So if you said to me, I can consistently give you 2 workouts a week, and you're being very honest with me, I can help you build muscle in 2 workouts a week. And I can tell you right now, it's going to be a total body workout.
Yeah.
Right? You got to get enough volume in across the week. And if you're only giving me 2 workouts, I have to hit all those muscle groups, ideally, 2 times, right? To see the type of growth that you want to see. So those 2 workouts are going to be total body. If you said to me, though, I can do 3 workouts in a week, okay, that changes things a little bit. Now I could still do a total body workout. I can manipulate the loads that we're using, so I could go heavier one time or lighter one time. Or I have another option that I think is very effective, and that is I could give you an upper body workout on Monday, a lower body workout on a Wednesday or so, and then a total body workout on Friday or Saturday.
Yeah.
You followed that split once.
Yeah, I did.
You liked it?
I loved it. It was a great way to introduce into training, because I felt that I was able to get every muscle group hit multiple times a week.
Without like living at the gym.
Yeah, without living at the gym. I had, you know, I was in my early 20s. I had a life outside of the gym. I was seeing friends, girlfriends, et cetera, et cetera. So there was stuff I wanted to do outside of training. So it gave me the opportunity to have 3 training days and time away where I could do whatever I wanted.
So some would say maybe a push-pull legs, and that is a possibility, but you really have to learn how to train harder in those sessions, because you're going to probably sacrifice on a 3-day split the second time through.
That volume.
Right, you're going to sacrifice the volume. Unless you learn to do the push-pull legs twice in a week, right, where you're doing it a total of 6 workouts. So push-pull legs, day off, push-pull legs. Like, it might be a little, you might be sacrificing some gains unless you're able to dedicate the intensity required. And we're going to talk about intensity because it's a huge variable here.
Yeah.
But it does open up the door. Now when you say I could do 4 days a week or 5 days a week, now there's other options here. Again, they all work, but we have other options. One of my favorite ways, honestly, still to train is with an educated bro split, where we can kind of pair up chest and triceps, right? Back and biceps, shoulders, legs on their own day, arms, like we can break it up that way. And if you choose the exercises properly, you're able to come back and hit the muscles you trained primarily on, let's say, day 1, come back and hit them in an accessory way a couple days later.
Right.
Or for instance, you can even break it down even more to, let's say, back day. And then when I do bicep day, if I'm doing exercises like a weighted chin-up for my biceps, which is an effective way to build your biceps, very effective, one of my favorite ways actually, I can train my back in an indirect manner 48 hours or so, 72 hours after I already did.
Yeah.
So I can get that recurring frequency back to those big muscle groups in a more ancillary way. But that works too. But I have more options as I go. But again, the punchline here is no magic split. Just find one that you enjoy that you can dedicate the time to with consistency, because that's the big startup point.
Yeah, I remember you always telling me the best split you can do is the one you can stick with.
Yeah, 100%. Now, that takes a little bit of pressure off of you, because you don't have to be, resorting to one and only one split. But that's the framework for what we're talking about. What's really the meat and potatoes of what we have?
Exercise selection?
Well, the exercises, because the exercises do matter. And again, I'm going to show you here too that it's not all about the exercises, because there's another variable that comes in that you need to consider. But when it comes to exercises, there are staple exercises that I want to see no matter which of those splits you were doing. The exercises are going to, they're basically your big compounds, but I narrow them down to the ones that I think are the most effective, and they're actually based off of, remember Arnold's Golden Six?
Oh, yes, I do.
Right. So Arnold Schwarzenegger had his Golden Six exercises. So what are our 6 exercises that we believe are really the most important? Number 1, a weighted pull-up or a weighted chin-up. Yeah. Now, I say weighted because I want you to be in the mindset of progressively loading those exercises, not just loading it by doing 10 reps of a pull-up and 15 reps of a pull-up and 20 reps. I want you to keep the repetitions down by increasing the weight so we can build our strength on the exercise. The second exercise, a bench press.
Yep, standard.
Standard. I personally would probably always veer towards a dumbbell bench press or a variation of a dumbbell bench press rather than the barbell bench press, simply because the barbell bench press is very uncomfortable for me orthopedically. And I think it's okay for you to make those decisions. Actually, really even highlighted even more so when I talk about the next exercise, which number 3 on that sort of Golden Six would be a squat.
I love squats.
Now, you love them, I hate them.
Yep, your knees.
My knees kill me. Now, this is a big point that you have to be willing to accept and be okay with. I can squat more comfortably to a box. Mm-hmm. Doesn't change anything else in terms of the weight that I can use. I can actually use a lot heavier weight. When I have the comfort of knowing that in the instance that my knees really bite me on the way down, I do have a landing spot for me rather than crashing down to the floor or against the pins. That gives my body, me, just that mental confidence to actually do the exercise much more freely, and I'm able to do it more pain-free. There's nothing wrong with making the modification. I'm just saying find some variation of the squat and utilize that as number 3. Number 4, your favorite, I'll let you say it.
Deadlifts.
Deadlifts.
That's my favorite exercise of all time.
And he's done quite well building his strength up on that exercise.
Yeah.
So up to what, 560 on
560.
that? 560. So I mean, again, and that's, I would say that you're, mechanically, you have a good advantage in that exercise.
Long arms.
Right, you found that exercise, it worked for you and you've been able to do it. But it doesn't matter, even if you're not biomechanically set up exactly perfectly for the exercise, it's still one you need to learn to include in your workouts. You should include, because fundamentally and functionally it's one of the most basic movement patterns we have. Right, being able to go down and pick something up. Next one, an overhead press. Mm-hmm. Right, some variation of an overhead press. It's a vertical pushing movement. I want to see one of those in there. The last exercise for me, and people laugh, but I actually think it's just deservedly part of the 6, is a barbell curl. And I say that as with the realization of knowing that ultimately, no matter how many people, and even at the top level athlete, aesthetically, they still want to have arms.
Yeah, always.
And I don't think that you could achieve maximum arm development by just sticking to the bigger compound lifts we already talked about. Yeah. I think that by having a barbell curl dedicated to building your biceps is going to lead to the biceps that you want. And ultimately, I have to say, it's the exercise that I think led to my biggest development. So how are you approaching these exercises? These big 6 need to be approached with a desire to get stronger on them, right? It's the strength on these exercises.
Yeah, it's not just about moving the weight and just getting as many reps in as you possibly can. The goal should be to move more weight each session, at least in my opinion. I think that for me, when it came to building size, it came a lot down to building my strength too. And doing that was a lot of progressive overload with those big compound lifts, especially with those Golden Six. I think that those were, stable exercises in helping increase my overall frame.
Well,
as I
you tried the method of like, long before you met me, when you dabbled in weights.
Yep.
You were like doing a lot of the pretty stuff.
Yeah, I was all the
concentration curls.
Concentration curls.
A couple of forearm curls.
Yes.
Or other forearm exercises.
All right.
Something.
That's left to private, okay?
Bottom line is you were doing like kind of the stuff that was prettier, but not the basics.
Yeah.
But when you focused on actually just building the basics in your strength in those exercises, things started to happen.
Yeah, I noticed a big change in my physique, and I think that I compliment a lot of my gains today to my building a foundation in those compound lifts.
So the basic structure for how you would do that, again, you're going to ask that next question, so let's tell you. The basic structure is pick a framework. A 3x5 works really well.
Yeah.
Right? 3 sets of 5.
That's what I built my strength off of.
Starting at 75 to 80%.
Yep.
Fair enough. That's what you started at.
Yep.
So 75 to 80% of your 1 rep max, and essentially just continuing to add weight as you're able to still rep out those 3 sets of 5.
Yeah.
Right? Until you can't. At what point, what did you do after that? When you couldn't get your 3 sets of 5 on an exercise like the squat?
Well, there's 2 different things that I did. One was I would back down a couple weight increments down from where I was.
Yep.
And I would start to just practice with that weight and
So that got easier.
So it got easier. So I mastered that weight, and then as I increased the weight that was difficult before became easier.
Right.
The other way I did it was I manipulated the sets and reps a little bit just to produce a little different stimulus, a novel stimulus, as they say. And I think that when I did that for like 2-3 weeks, and then I jumped back to trying to go to that weight that I failed at before, it was like magic.
Yeah, so that basic framework could be done with all these exercises. And when I said before the weighted chin-ups or weighted pull-ups, that's the same idea here.
Yeah.
I'm trying to limit you to about 5 of those. So throwing a little bit of extra weight around your body with, I show with a dog leash just wrapped around their weight with a plate in the middle of
Yeah.
it. Any way to just you could hold it with your feet, but any way you could add a little additional weight, that's a different way to do the exercise.
Yeah.
Okay?
And also, all these Golden 6 exercises and this protocol is available in Old School Iron, which is the program that I use to build the most strength possible and the most size possible.
Right. I literally have a program that based it around this called Old School Iron, available at ATHLEAN-X.com. But let's keep going because I want to make sure that they have the whole framework here of how this works because it's important. The next thing is, around that concept of building your strength, I think people make one giant error long term. And I'm not saying in the next month, in the next 3 months, in the next 6 months. I'm talking about in the next year, in the next 10 years, in the next 30 years. And that is focusing so much on adding the weight in those big compound exercises without paying attention to fortifying the foundation of your body to perform them long term for years to come.
Yep.
You know the guys that could actually go out there and like they deadlift well into their 70s and they compete in the Masters and they're right? I believe they're there competing still, pain-free, injury-free, because they did this the right way. And the guys that get knocked out of the lifting game a lot earlier than that, or can't do so many exercises because orthopedically their bodies can't handle it anymore, they're the ones that likely rushed through the process without paying attention to what you should, and that is the importance of corrective exercises.
Yes.
That's the next most important point here. What are the corrective exercises?
Corrective exercises include
The boring stuff.
Yeah, the stuff you don't want to do.
Right.
The stuff that you normally relegate to the very end of your workout. You rush through it real quick and then you're done.
Yeah. By the way, it's a good point. Before the correctives, the exercise that you don't want to do.
Yeah.
Right? If you are avoiding some of the exercises I just talked about in the Golden 6 because you don't want to do them, I'm going to give you a clue here. That's likely because it's the most important exercise for you to be doing right now. In other words, you recognize the challenge of it, you recognize the discomfort of it, and your body's like, I'll do anything except that exercise. If it's not pain that's causing you that decision, it's just the fact that you don't really want to do it, I put that in the class of exerphobia, meaning I'm avoiding the exercise I probably should do. The ones that you probably fear the most are the ones that your body will most likely respond to the most and benefit you the most. So you need to get over that hump. You did have to get over the hump with that with your squats.
Yes, I did. Squats and deadlifts.
Right.
Deadlift I was terrified of, to be honest.
Yeah.
I was always afraid. Everyone always told me, deadlift, you're going to blow your back out. You're going to herniate a disc. You're going to do this. You're going to do that. So I avoided it for the longest time. And then once I finally got into it, I was like, wow, this exercise is actually awesome.
Right, because though, back to what we just talked about, building the foundation of the correctives too.
Yeah.
Okay, so the corrective exercise, I'll reveal a few of them. I'll just name them off here. The face pull.
Face pulls.
Believe it or not. How do you think that made the list? It always
Yeah.
makes the list. The face pull, one of my favorite exercises. Reverse hypers.
Yep.
You know, reverse hypers, you lay at the end of a bench, your legs are hanging off the end of the bench. You could have a dumbbell in your legs if you need a little extra resistance. And you're just squeezing through the glutes first, lifting the legs up to parallel, and then bringing them down, right? One of the best exercises for your glutes, posterior chain, low back. Band pull-aparts.
Yep.
Going from a high to low position though, so starting with the band up high, pulling them apart, and externally rotating your arms as you go down, turning your thumbs towards the back as you go down.
Yeah.
Great rotator cuff strengthening exercise, lower trap exercise, integrating all those small muscles of the upper back.
Yeah.
External rotation, just a simple act of just simply externally rotating the band, having it anchored over here somewhere and externally rotating the band. A movement that we really don't get in a lot of our exercises, certainly none of the ones that we were talking about before, where we're getting a lot of, and in the big exercise, we're getting a lot of external rotation.
Yeah.
So realizing that those muscles are important too, you need to incorporate them. Angels and devils, right? I lay flat on my stomach, I have my arms up over my head, and I just bring them down to my side, right? And then up to the top again. I'm basically going through this range of motion. There's some mobility at my shoulders required. It's again a glute strengthener as I have to squeeze my legs up off the ground. It's a good low back strengthener, but it does a lot of things. And things that we don't, again, get in those other exercises that we talked about before. And then anything for the hips. So clamshells, where you have the band around around your knees and you're externally rotating your hip, or like banded hip walks, where you have the band around your legs, or you're holding the band around in your hands around your legs and you're sidestepping. All that sort of, we call it mini band work, but all that little hip rotary strength. Again, in a squat, you're talking about everything in the sagittal plane. Working the rotators and increasing the strength of the rotators of the hip make you far more resilient to, I think, to some of the injuries that pop up, especially when little things happen as you get heavier and heavier on the exercises.
I have noticed that in my experience that when I was starting out with the compound lifts, the days that I did ignore doing my correctives, I felt weaker going into my next session. When I started making a concerted effort to really focus on those corrective exercises, whether at the beginning or the end of my workout, and really putting the time that's needed for them, I was avoiding injuries. I wasn't having as much soreness or as much pain, and I felt stronger on every single lift that I did.
So you can do them in a couple ways. If you want to do these correctives, you need to do these correctives. You could do them as primers for the bigger lifts. So if you're doing, let's say, squats, you could do some of the lower body hip primers we just talked about, or you could do them as sort of extra additional work, so even when you're doing lower body day, you're increasing the volume of your correctives by doing, let's say, your rotator cuff work. Right? Although that will actually help you to feel a little bit more capable of getting your arms in position to grab the bar on a squat.
I have noticed that for me, we documented on the previous video that I didn't like to do the barbell bench press. So what I started doing was I did a mix between primer and corrective at the end of the workout, where when I was going to a bench press session with the barbell, I would start with 3 sets of external rotation with the band, and then at the very end of the workout, I would do the band pull-aparts.
Gotcha.
And my shoulders have never felt better, and I don't get pain and clicking when I bench press.
People think that shoulder pain is reserved for old guys like me. Like, it's not. I think some of the damage I did was trying to progressively add weights to those big lifts back in my 20s, never having prepared my body to do that, and then paying the price orthopedically down the road. I just think it's not a negotiable. Like, if you want to be a long-term lifter and lift for many years, long into your 70s, again, this is not just about the next year. When I say the smartest way to build muscle, I'm talking about this is smart because this is going to set you up for longevity, not just what can you do next week. I don't care. I mean, I like it. I'm impressed when you can show me what you do, but I want to know, can you do this for a long period of time? And can you do it unassisted? Because if you can just go inject a bunch of steroids and kind of shortcut this whole process, I'm not really impressed. Okay, I'm not really convinced that you know what you're doing. Right? The next thing is, we left out the other exercises, because you're not just doing 6 exercises. Right? And I know you probably asked that question, well, what about the rest of the stuff? How do I determine what I do? How much of it do I do? When do I do it? Right? Let's answer that question. The first thing I think you need to try to do when you start to fill in around these other exercises, when you want to build muscle, is you need to work on filling in complementary exercises. So what is a complementary exercise? Like, why don't we start with just chest as a way to sort of focus in on what we're talking about. If we're doing a chest workout, and I did a bench press, like a complementary exercise would have to probably look at the other functions of the muscle, right? Knowing that we want to get that adduction of the arm across the chest because that's one of the main functions of the chest. So doing simply a bench press, while we get some adduction here, we're not getting it through full range of motion. So can I do an exercise that does that?
Yes.
Like?
Cable crossover.
Like a crossover, right? So crossover would become a great and almost necessary exercise to put in if you're looking at filling in the functions that you're missing with the exercise that you already did with your basic compound exercise. We also know anatomically that muscles like the chest have different heads. So if I could hit another head of the chest, in this case maybe the upper chest, more so than just the sternal portion of the chest we get with a basic bench press, then I might want to consider or highly consider putting in some type of incline exercise, or at least an exercise that takes me from a position from down low to up high, which would happen with an incline press, or with a crossover that goes from low to high. So a low to high crossover is going to kill two birds with one stone.
You get the adduction and the low to high function.
Which would make me then ask you, well, how much time do you have? Do you have 30-minute workouts, 45-minute workouts, hour workouts? You got time for an hour and a half? Because that would allow me to sort of determine, do I need to go with the 2-for-1 here with the low to high crossover? Or could I give you an incline bench press or and a crossover separately? Right, where I can kind of work with those. But that is determined by your availability to train in terms of the length of your workouts. And again, I can't answer that question for you directly here, what the best answer is. Just realize that you can increase the number of options the more time you have. And sometimes when the time is really the big constraint, you're going to have to pick the bang for your buck exercises that combine more things. The other concept of training through different planes of motion. As a physical therapist, I realize, like, again, in training athletes, like, we need to ultimately, I think, be able to perform something other than just build the muscle, but be able to use that muscle. So I like to be sure that we can train and move in 3 planes of motion: the sagittal plane, the frontal plane, and the transverse plane, right? And the ones that kind of come into focus mostly when we're talking about training for hypertrophy is the horizontal training and the vertical training. So like a vertical back exercise could be a pull-up or a lat pull-down, right? Whereas a horizontal exercise could be like a seated row, right? Where I'm moving the weight horizontally, or I'm moving my body in space, or the bar and the pull down vertically. And a lot of times we like to select exercises that do each of those things in the workout. So a back workout or a pull workout is going to make sure we have some pulls that are vertical and some pulls that are horizontal, right? And I think that's not only even just for the overall well-roundedness and athleticism that brings you, I think it also brings the best overall development, knowing that the different muscles of the back respond to the horizontal versus vertical movement slightly differently. With the lats getting more of a focus on the vertical, and that mid-back thickness and the depth of you, if you look from the side, is impacted more by those horizontal rowing movements. So being able to have that as a consideration. You might have weak points. Okay, I've never really liked my upper chest that much, truth be told. Jesse?
I don't like my upper chest either. Don't worry.
And so when I do movements, I try to veer towards doing more of those if I can, because I'm trying to give it a little bit of extra attention, a little bit of extra volume. Knowing that if I choose too many exercises, I'm going to wind up becoming fatigued. And if I just relegate a couple sets at the end to my weak point, it's not really going to be enough. Especially because I'm giving a half-assed effort at that point. I think that there's also a consideration for variety for the sake of interest. And let's just call it like it is. Like, if you, again, are doing the same exercises all the time, while they might help a beginner learn movement patterns and get really good at them, at some point, the more advanced lifter is going to probably seek variety just to keep their head in the game.
Yeah, because you don't want to get bored when you're lifting. Because honestly, that's one of the big things that can kick someone out of a workout or a workout routine, is that they're bored. They're doing the same thing over and over and over again. They don't see any new results. They don't feel any different stimulus or anything like that. And they say, I don't want to do this anymore.
Right. So people want to try things. So when they see new exercises on Instagram, unless the exercise just sucks and it was just literally a creation just to make someone think it's something like that's good, then I think it's worth trying, because people are like, oh, I want to go try that in my next back workout, and they make sure they go to the gym and they try it. There's some value there. There's some value to getting people involved mentally to be able to do that. Now, as far as how this all kind of comes together, specifically in the terms of the number of, let's say, sets that you would do for a muscle group across the course of a week, I mean, you're looking at, on the low end, probably around six sets or so on the very low end, and up to more around 15 sets or so, maybe 18 sets for a muscle group, which I think is one other interesting point here, and that is, are you better off, let's say you're doing, let's just say 9 sets. Are you better off doing 3 exercises for 3 sets apiece? Or are you better off doing more exercises for fewer sets? So let's just say 5 exercises, a few of them you're doing for 2 sets, and a couple of them you're doing even just 1 set on. Like, is there a viability to that approach? Is it better to have more variety as opposed to just more volume of one exercise? And I will tell you this, the more advanced, again, that you get, I think that comes into play a lot more. Like, in other words, you might see better results from dropping the exercise set volume down and trading it off for an increase in variety of the exercise. Why? Because, again, you can hit a muscle group like the chest from many different angles and loads, right? Some exercises are able to be loaded more than others. You can hit the muscle a little bit more comprehensively, and you kind of know, you have the ability to get into the exercise and get what you need from it much more readily when you are more experienced.
Yeah.
I could do 1 set of any exercise and feel like I got everything out of it, especially as we get into here in a second, the intensity techniques. I can get a hell of a lot more out of it by doing just the 1 set as long as I'm giving it my all. Whereas a beginner might not even have the movement pattern down. They don't even have the muscle recruitment capabilities on the exercise because it still feels like the first time they rode a bike. It's very awkward.
Yeah.
Right? If you still feel awkward or not able to recruit the muscles that you want, feel the contraction on the exercise you're doing, then don't go into the multiple exercise, lower set approach. Stick with the fewer exercises, higher set approach to get better at the exercise.
Yeah, master that exercise before moving on to another one.
Yeah. But as a general guideline, the number of sets per muscle group per week is sort of a good basic starting point for that.
Yeah.
And when you're doing total body workouts, you have to start to consider the fact that obviously some of these movements count as a tricep exercise, a shoulder exercise, and a chest exercise.
Yeah.
And they can contribute in each of those areas. And if you think that like the chest is the main muscle group of a bench press, then favor it a little bit more, but favor it a little bit less towards the overall tricep contribution for the week.
Yeah.
Or the overall shoulder contribution for the week, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Now we come to the other part though. So we talked about like the overall structure being the split, and then the exercise like choice as the meat and potatoes of it. But you're still not really out of the woods. Like, you don't have your whole plan in place here. Because what if I told you you're going to do some variation of a squat and you're going to do it on leg day? I've given you the split and I've given you the exercise. And then you go choose a pink dumbbell to do dumbbell drop squats or goblet squats. Like, it's likely going to fail.
Yeah.
It's not going to build muscle. That's where the load that we use and the intensity techniques that we use become the determining factor between the success or failure of whatever structure you were even given.
Yeah.
Because this is where it could all literally fall apart if you don't know what to do. So first and foremost, like, what kind of loads would you want to use if you're trying to train for hypertrophy? We've talked about this before. Here's the good answer for you. There's a huge variation in the amount of weight that you can use and still see hypertrophic gains.
Yeah.
That means you can lift as few as 5 repetitions, even up to 30 repetitions. But there's one key determining factor about whether or not you build muscle when you're lifting 20 reps, 25 reps. And that is training to failure. You need to train to failure as you get higher and higher in the repetition ranges with lighter and lighter weights. It's a great way to train. But one thing that you're sacrificing and why that's a little less effective is you start to sacrifice the overall tension that you're getting from the exercise. So remember, the drivers of hypertrophy, mechanical tension, what that muscle feels as it's trying to lift the weight, that same feeling that you hated before, that fear factor of doing those big exercises we talked about, the exerphobia, that's what I'm talking about. Some of that actual load that you have in your hands that causes some of that intimidation is a driver of hypertrophy because it's the overall tension that you're responding to, right? So that tension is good. The second thing is the eccentric portion of the lift. In other words, the elongation or the stretching of a muscle under load. Now, some have taken that concept to the extreme in a fairly uninformed way, I believe. Like, in other words, they're taking that to the extreme of eliminating full range of motion, recommending only partial repetitions in the stretch phase of the exercise. Again, looking at this much more comprehensively, especially as a physical therapist, I see the benefits far beyond just hypertrophy and just in this small little experiment that I think is not necessarily telling us what we need to know. That's not my recommendation. But my recommendation for sure is utilizing slower eccentrics, the tension, the elongation of that muscle under tension as sort of a back-to-back paired-up driver of hypertrophy, a really good, strong stimulus for hypertrophy.
Yeah.
And again, the metabolic stress that we can apply to a muscle through some of these higher repetitions to failure, that real burning discomfort that you feel from doing these high rep sets to failure, that's another driver that can also bring hypertrophy. So you need to learn how to utilize these techniques, and you need to learn how to sort of lean into them. So if we're talking about failure, I think it's interesting for you to understand that failure is defined so arbitrarily.
Yeah.
There's so many elements to failure. Like if I told Jesse right now, go do a max effort lat pull down right back there and go to failure, right? Mm-hmm. We can assume that Jesse has enough experience to know that this is truly his failure mark. But what if I said to him, I'm gonna put your favorite song on. What's your favorite song?
Favorite song to lift to?
Yeah, your favorite love song.
Favorite love song?
No, what's your favorite song to lift to?
Favorite song to lift to? Pittsburgh No Intro by Amity Affliction.
I have no fucking idea what that is.
I
But
know.
meanwhile, that we're gonna put that on.
Okay.
And I'm gonna take out the smelling salts.
Okay.
I'm gonna wave them under your nose.
Yes.
Get you all. I'm gonna smack you on the back like that.
Let's go.
Then I'm gonna have you go back and do a set. Do you think that number is gonna be higher?
Yes.
So my question right off the bat is, even though that was a true failure in that first set, I didn't introduce the other stimuli that allowed you to do more. So now I have to question, let's say you did 2 extra reps there. Does that mean that your first failure was actually 2 in the tank?
Yeah, I guess.
So these are things that we have to discuss. And I think that critically realizing what you're capable of, and a lot of times realizing that people who are trying to build muscle base everything off of an effort that is not even nearly close enough to be considered failure. And a lot of the studies that we read, by the way, it's a difficult time for them to actually control failure, and only if they're being done by certain people who I actually have a respect for in the field, who know how to kind of regulate failure and ensure that people are training to that max effort.
Yeah.
You have to question a lot of the other studies about, that discuss failure as the point of reference.
For example, like with an untrained individual, when they say untrained individuals,
trained versus untrained. Yeah.
Untrained individuals don't know failure the same way that someone that's been lifting for 30 plus years knows failure. Because I'll give you an example. When I first started lifting, we actually made a video on this, the 3 sets of 12. I stopped at 12 reps because I thought it's uncomfortable. I can't get any more. It is what it is. Jeff comes in here and says, no, you can easily do more. That did not look anywhere close to failure. He had me do another set, and he said, no, get another one. And I forced it.
Yeah,
I forced the lat pull down.
Cueing, right.
He said, get another one, and I was able to get another one down. He said, fight for the next one, and I was able to grind that last rep out. So I got 3 more reps than I did.
So physically, you were capable of much more. Just mentally, you weren't capable of tapping into it.
Exactly. I didn't know what failure was, and in the case of an untrained individual, they likely don't know what failure is either.
Truth be told, I think that this is where a lot of the frustration in science-based lifting is right now, because people don't know how to interpret what is actually being told to them, right? Because all this stuff is, in a lot of cases, arbitrarily defined, or people are jumping to conclusions for potential biased reasons of what the value, or overstating the value of what something can do. Look, I talked about it just a second ago. Let's just look at this again, and we're doing this objectively. I'm not trying to pick on anybody in particular. Like the value of the stretch position. Again, we just talked about why that's a very valuable position, because of the tension and the actual mechanical stretch of a muscle. But quantifying that in a study and quantifying that in reality are 2 very different things. So if you're going to promise me 5% additional gains by only hanging out in the bottom position of a stretch incline curl, my question to you is, what does that look like physically at the end of the study?
Right.
And if you have a 5% increase, and we had a control who gained an inch, and you gained 5% more than the control did by training this way, you're talking about an extra 1/2 of an inch. So what is that? 1/20th of an inch.
Yeah. What is that?
I don't know what that is. Like, I don't know what that, but in a study it sounds good. 5% gains, okay, by doing this instead. But then you have to ask yourself the question of, but what's also compromised? By eliminating the full range of motion on the exercise. Beyond hypertrophy, what is compromised in terms of the overall value and benefit of the exercise? Because we know training through a full range of motion, at least orthopedically, is an important thing.
Yeah.
To maintain range of motion, to maintain flexibility, to maintain joint integrity.
Yeah, I was going to
Not
say.
just on a curl, but on all exercises.
I was going to say, like, if you only train in the stretch position of a bicep curl down here, right? And then you're forced, let's say in athletics or anything else, where you need to put your arm here, your strength here is not going to be anywhere near the same as it would if you went full range of motion.
From a strength standpoint, that's a whole other thing that needs to be looked at more, because we know that even when you're testing isometric strength, it's within the sort of range of 10 degrees up and down of wherever you train that you're really increasing the strength. So what's happening strength-wise to the full range of motion? I'm guessing that's being compromised. I know that there's some studies that are trying to disprove that, but we need to see a lot more of that. And I also think that when it comes to these exercises done exclusively in this extended range of motion, again, I'm going to look at it from a different perspective as a PT, and again, for longevity. I'm going to tell you right now, and go out on a limb, I don't think you're going to like training in these long extended ranges of motion exclusively from a tendon health perspective long term, right? It's a lot of stress to put on in this one extended range of motion, and I think that that's going to bring some other ramifications that we're going to have to deal with orthopedically down the road. PTs might become a lot more popular in terms of their patient load as a result of people jumping and, again, pursuing a 5% increase that on paper sounds nice, but in reality doesn't. Yeah. Right? And I think
it makes no difference.
Right. So, like, where would you start? Because now we're talking about different techniques. Like, I always recommended people start where I started a long time ago, and that was the Mike Mentzer approach. Remember that? Yeah. I made videos about this. People like to say Mike Mentzer's an idiot or he was wrong. The one thing he said was, and it's interesting because he was a guy who had used steroids, but also trained naturally and felt he was qualified to sort of speak as to the difference between the two. He said, start with one set. Start with one set. He encouraged and taught people how to achieve that level of failure, as close as we were just describing, to one set failure, and then from there, add if needed, and only if needed. And in many cases, he didn't think people needed to add any more than that. He thought people needed to subtract in terms of spacing out their volume over the course of a week. So you're doing fewer training sessions. Now, I never found that to be as interesting because I kind of like being in the gym, but I did find it interesting to be able to hone in on what failure actually was, and then make those changes myself in terms of adding additional sets. But you can always add from there. You objectively assess what the value of one set is, and then you can objectively assess what happens when you add one more, as opposed to arbitrarily selecting, let's say, 9 sets and then having to either back down or increase because you're not seeing the results that you want.
And you don't know which way to go.
Yeah, you're not even sure which way you're going, right? So those are important. And again, we also talked about something called effective reps. Utilizing effective reps is a strategy that I've made a whole video series on. I think it was a 100 series.
Yeah, the 100 series.
If the most effective repetitions are those that occur at the end of the set, then should you try to apply more of those repetitions across a workout? And the way you would do that is you perform a set to failure, you rest a lot shorter than you typically would, let's say 30 seconds to 45 seconds, you go right back into the set again with the same amount of weight. What's going to happen there? On the second or third repetition because the rest time was minimized, you're right back into those grinding effective reps again that you need to be able to push through. And you're still using the load that you used before. So you're getting an accumulation of more of those reps that we will term, again, effective reps, those end range, end stage reps of a set that are more conducive to hypertrophy. So how often would you make these changes? How often would you want to employ these? I think in terms of failure, guys, you're going to want to have failure be a component of a large amount of the sets that you're doing, not the strength work. Okay, not the strength work, the hypertrophy work that we're talking about. Regarding these other types of techniques, right, the effective reps or things like that, drop sets, I think that becomes a feel thing. I don't think that the beginner needs to run out there and start doing all these repetition styles and techniques, but as you become more and more experienced, I think these techniques become more imperative and almost necessary to continue to push the intensity to a level high enough that your resilient body has become. It will force it to be able to still drive new gains. I use a lot of intensity techniques in my workouts right now. Comprehensively, you got your split. the idea of your split. You've got your basic exercises down. You've got the role of your auxiliary exercises and how they should fit into your program. You've got the techniques and how they sort of should enhance the intensity or take back depending upon your ability level. What about cardio and conditioning? Do you do any?
I do actually. I've actually started implementing walking into my routine at the end of every single workout.
Okay.
Because right now I'm doing a little bit more of a powerlifting focus, but I know the benefit of being able to have a good cardiovascular system operating while I'm doing as many reps as I possibly
just
can.
to be healthier, right?
Yeah,
I think, look at conditioning, your heart is a different muscle, okay? I don't care what you see in the mirror. That one you're not going to see, but it's no less important. You need to strengthen your heart. The only way you're going to do that is through your dedicated conditioning and cardio work.
Yeah.
I will say that when you're talking about muscle building, there are forms of cardio that are more conducive to helping you build muscle. If you do battle ropes, you're going to get an anaerobic demand on your muscles as well that can enhance the muscle that you're already building. Mm-hmm. If you do hill running, sprinting, right, sled work, you're going to get a conditioning effect, but you're also kind of getting that anaerobic benefit that will help add to the overall muscle building picture.
Yeah.
But that doesn't matter. Again, in the big picture, I still want to see maybe 2 times a week just doing general cardio work and conditioning for your heart. And then if you're going to do additional conditioning, 1 to 2 sessions a week, ideally not on training days.
Yeah. Right, and not sandwiched around your leg day unless it's after your leg day. It can work as a bit of a flush. Mm-hmm. You're going to want to make sure you at least have some component present, because the big picture here, not just what you look like, but how you function and how long you can function on this earth are going to be benefiting from that. Sticking with that, the basics, there are a few other basics you want to make sure you have in place here. Your sleep.
Yep.
Your hydration. Mm-hmm. Right? Your nutrition.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Your stress levels.
Yep.
You guys have no idea how stressful it is to have Jesse with me every day. No idea.
It's the worst.
What it's like. but so I do my best in all the other areas. Hydration, I give the general rule of around a half, for every pound of body weight, a half an ounce to an ounce of water, okay? That's the first thing for that. Throughout the day, spread throughout the day. Try to stay hydrated throughout the day. You will be peeing quite often, and if you are, and it's clear, it's probably a good indicator that you're doing enough to keep yourself on track with your hydration. Sleep-wise, I'm very guilty of not getting enough sleep. That doesn't mean that I think it's great that you don't do that. Mm-hmm. I just think that on average, most people will respond to around 6 to 8 hours of sleep per night. But there is variation in terms of the amount of sleep that people seem to require. Yeah. Certain people do thrive on less sleep than others. I just don't know if that, like once you start to get under 5 hours, like sometimes with me, I don't know if that's serving anybody. It's not really serving anybody long term, and not especially again long term. Yeah. So make sure you get your sleep. Stress levels, you try to manage your stress, because we know that as your cortisol levels will rise, it's going to become more and more difficult to put on muscle and strip away body fat. Yeah. Right? You need to kind of limit the stressors in your life, except when you require them to work with you because of the things that they do, then you just have to do your best. Motivation, real quick on motivation. I think there's another question people ask me all the time. I love that you just went through this whole thing with me, Jeff, and you gave me all the step-by-step, but how the hell do you do it? How do you stay motivated? Why do you, you do this because this is what you do for a living. And truth be told, one of my motivators to being able to do what I do is I do this for a living. In other words, I have to show up here. It's my job. I have to show up. I have an accountability to you as a viewer of my channel to be able to show up in a way that I think represents what I stand for. Yeah. Okay? And I do that. Jesse, how do you find motivation? Especially coming from a place where you were, like many that watched, you didn't care about training. You didn't want to train, and you looked like it in the process. You were pretty skinny.
Yeah. Well, right now, my motivation is being the best version of myself, being the biggest, strongest, healthiest version of myself, and being able to function not just in the weight room, but outside the weight room as well.
You want to give back to the world.
Yeah, I
do.
Run
for president? I think people would like you as a candidate. I think
I'd get the most votes this time.
As a write-in, might be actually very successful this time around. All right. The other thing that that many are going to want to talk about, and I want to just preface this way. I just made this whole big long video on everything we talked about. Nutrition could be its own video, and I'll make that whole video if you want me to make that whole video. Let me just suffice it to say that nutrition is obviously a large part of what we do here. Mm-hmm. Finding a reasonable plan that you can stick to, sounds like I was talking about with the workouts, right? Is going to be the only way you can stick to nutrition long term. I don't believe that's going to come from restricting or removing carbohydrates from your diet long term.
I don't. I think that as in terms of muscle building, you're going to want to keep carbohydrates in your diet. I think that you're going to be able to adequately fuel yourself most when you have carbohydrates present. And you need to learn to live with carbohydrates.
Yeah.
Because they're going to come back. You're going to want them again. And when they do, you need to learn how to live with them. I have eaten carbohydrates for all my years of existence and trained with them and remained incredibly lean, not foregoing them. I think that's the major point here is that carbohydrates need to be there, but you also need to have a balance. You need to have your healthy fats. I have stories about how I got off track by not having my healthy fats.
Yep.
And most of all, regardless of whether you're trying to build a lot of muscle or a little bit of muscle or even a slight deficit and trying to hang on to muscle, protein. You need to have protein as the foundation of all your meals.
Do you think you need to have protein?
I think you need to have protein. You need to base your meal around protein. So put a third of your meal, a third of your plate is protein first and build around that. I talked about before, like you take your carbohydrates, you double up the amount of fibrous carbohydrates, like the vegetable type carbohydrates that are calorically a lot less dense, and you put them in twice the amount of your starchy carbohydrates.
Yeah.
So manipulate your carbohydrates that way. Again, I'll get into all the specifics. If you want to hear more about that, leave your comment below and I'll do that. Lastly, supplementation. As a general rule, do I think supplements fit in someone's program who are trying to build muscle? 1,000%. Because I think that they help us to meet our daily goals a lot more easily than for those people who struggle to do it step by step, having to do it themselves. And I think even impractically, because you can't really get, for instance, creatine monohydrate. I don't think you can reliably get enough creatine monohydrate in your diet on a daily basis, which is what you need, about 5 grams a day, to be able to see the benefits of that versus supplementing with it. You're going to need to supplement with that.
Okay.
And I think that we know the research is rampant and long-term showing the benefits of creatine monohydrate in terms of the body composition, overall performance, leading to overall better muscle gains. So there's one example. Protein. Did I mention protein? Protein powder. Having a protein powder helps you to meet your daily protein goals, right? Having around, again, when you're looking to build muscle, around 1 to 1.2, 1.3, 1.4-ish grams of protein per pound of body weight.
Yeah.
Right? You need to get your protein, and having a protein powder actually helps with that. Omega-3 fish oil is one that I've been talking about for years. Controlling inflammation, helping with the recovery process, all the things we talked about before that start to happen because of stress. That supplement helps to do that, plus a multitude of other long-term health benefits that we know, again, lend towards longer longevity, greater longevity.
Yeah.
Damn it, I just talked a lot.
Yeah.
So, look, I hope this is as comprehensive. I wanted to make a video that gave you guys a little slower approach with a lot more information and content that you could digest, mark, and share with somebody else. I'll bookmark the video so you have the different parts of the video that are you want to jump to. But share it with someone else you think could benefit. If you're looking for that program Jesse mentioned in the beginning, Old School Iron, where we talk about the basic 6 and we provide a meal plan for you. We provide all the steps to it. It is available over at ATHLEAN-X.com. What else? If you have done, and the supplements also, high quality supplements, always available over at ATHLEAN-X.com. If you found the video helpful, tell me what else you want to do. Any of these long, bigger picture topics you want me to break down, just leave them in the comments below. We'll make our best efforts to do that. All right, guys, click subscribe, turn on notifications, never miss a video when we put one out. See you soon.